Arlie, night for David Letterman tomorrow at 10.
Thanks again for staying up later, continuing our stay in Los Angeles with Sheena Easton. And as you just saw, she's collaborated with Prince. Saw the clip from You Got the Look. And everybody wants to know about Prince. From anybody, I mean, if Prince's newspaper boy were here, people would be saying, tell us about this guy. Now, you know him a little bit better than that.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a real mark of the impact he's made, I think, on not only the music world, but just to the kids of today, that people do want to talk about him all the time. I respect his privacy enough to not discuss his life. I don't know that much about his life, to be honest, because when we get together, we're in the studio, and I'll see him in that environment. I don't see him when he's just hanging out and doing his own thing. But I have worked with him now for 5 years, just over 5 years. And over the course of 5 years, it's taken a while, but I guess we have become friends. And the one thing that I think I'm really grateful to him for is that he takes time, and he's generous enough as an artist to teach me a lot of things. He's taught me a great deal about being in the studio, and he's taught me a lot about being a writer. More than anything, I think that that's the main debt that I owe to him, is that he had faith in me as a writer, and he taught me how to express myself better and how to be less afraid, because anyone who knows Prince's music, you certainly couldn't call him afraid.
No, he's on the edge for sure.
Yeah,
maybe over it.
Yeah, one of the main faults that I find with myself, and I guess other people do, is that I tend to sometimes be a little bit safe. And he's taught me to open up and not be intimidated by other people's opinion. And that's helped me blossom as a writer a lot, so I owe him a lot.
You think he's bothered by the fact that so many people not only don't like his music, but are flat out threatened or even revolted by it?
I think there are more people who do like his music.
Oh, no question. He's enormously popular.
I don't think any artist can lose sleep over the people who don't like your music. You're born with that if you're an artist, if you're creative in any way, you have to understand that for the amount of people that love you, there's going to be people who hate you and people who are indifferent to you. As an artist, I'm more offended by indifference than rejection, because rejection at least means that someone paid attention to your work. I think if you're an artist of Prince's caliber and Prince's genius, and I don't use that word a lot, you won't hear me say that, but I think that when they're doing talk about the decade of the 80s, then his name is going to come up as one of the pace setters and trend setters and true musical geniuses who created whole new styles of music and whole new approaches to expressing music. And that means he's contributed as an artist to our generation, and I think that that's what affects him, or should affect him, more than the few people who don't like his music.
What about the tabloid people? You're a favorite of theirs. In fact, the tabloids say that you and Prince are romantically linked.
Oh, we've had some really interesting things written, which really is funny. Certain things, one of my favorites was, I had just done You Got the Look with Prince. That had just been a hit. And I did the Miami Vice thing. So they had previously decided, Sheena Easton and Prince, Sheena Easton and Prince, oh, there's got to be something there. Yeah, okay, they shot the video in Paris. Let's make it that they have a house in Paris. Better still, he bought her a house in Paris. Better still, he bought her a mansion in Paris. Yeah.
Better still, it was the Louvre.
Yeah. No, but they did this. They had Prince buys Sheena Easton a mansion in Paris, and they're living together happily, and then comes along big bad Don Johnson, who sweeps her off her feet, and she flounces out of the mansion in Paris to go and live in Miami.
That's what happened, isn't it? That's the way I heard it.
Yeah. Well, you know, who was feeding my dogs in L.A.? That's what I want to know. Yeah, the tabloids are like that, and it's I guess a newspaper that will have an alien ate my dog, and Elvis is alive and well and running a grocery store and you know, like Poughkeepsie. Then if you're gonna if you're going to believe those statements and also believe what you read every day about, you know, various celebrities, then you're going to believe it. And nothing I'm going to say, I mean, I'm sure there's like 100,000 people out there going, she can't fool me. I know she was living in Paris with the prince. And that's fine. I won't go out of my way to defend myself against that. I feel that the people who know me really well, my friends and my family, who know my lifestyle, who know everything that's happening, they know the truth, and we giggle and laugh about it. And you have to, it's kind of sad, because what you have to do is you have to put this wall up, and you have to learn not to trust instinctively, and you have to learn to kind of defend yourself. And the one thing that that does is sometimes it gives you a defensive quality. I'll find myself in the middle of like doing a lot of interviews, especially when I'm traveling. I'm in Europe and different places like that, and it's the 10th interview of the day, and somebody asks me the same thing. So what about you and Prince? And you start to get defensive, and when you're defensive, you have that edge to you, and I don't like to present myself like that, and I don't like when I'm perceived like that. And sometimes at the end of an interview I go, God, I can't believe what I said, you know, because you get a little bit upset about having to constantly talk about private things just to set the record straight. And sometimes after a while I just go, yeah, we're living together, we have 6 kids. He's a wonderful cook.
Is it only the supermarket tabloids that do that, or does the mainstream press do that kind of thing? I would think not.
I think that's really, supermarket tabloids really do it. Mainstream press dwell upon the music and factual stuff and what you're doing, things like that.
Later with Bob Costas continues from L.A. in a moment.
Back from Los Angeles with Sheena Easton. What were things like for you growing up in Scotland?
Well, that's a wide question. The youngest of 6 kids. I guess the term we use here is blue collar. We call it working class. My father died when I was 10, but before that he worked in the steel foundry. And after my father died, my mother worked in a factory to raise us. And we were a close family. You know, we're still close. They all live back in Britain, and but we're still pretty tight with each other. And it was interesting. It was definitely, it had its moments.
Was it a tough life?
No, maybe it was. I don't know. I think I have this. I remember when I was in therapy, I went to therapy, you know, like the very Californian thing of therapy, which actually was good for me. I needed it. I remember one of the key things in therapy is let's talk about our childhood and find out why we're so screwed up, you know? And one thing that I've noticed is that I must blank out a lot of the negative stuff, because I really don't have any horror stories about growing up, and most people do. So it can't mean that my life was so perfect. It must mean that anything bad happened. I just blank it out. But I remember we didn't have money. I remember material things being tight, but we weren't poor because we used to have to give away our clothes to the poor family around the corner. So we weren't poor, but we certainly didn't have a lot of comforts of life. But my mother is like one of my heroes, because she was one of those mothers who, before I went to school, I could read and write and all those things, because she used to make learning a game and make learning fun. And she was the kind of mother who, for 5 minutes peace and quiet, you know, she needed like 5 minutes of break, she would give us clothes pegs to twist into our hair to pretend we were hairdressers. And sometimes she had to cut them out with scissors because we made such a mess of her hair. But she didn't care. She got 5 minutes break. Or when she wanted to read the newspaper, she'd give us a page of the newspaper, and we had to point to letters that we knew and words that we knew, like man, cat, the. And so we built up a vocabulary, and she got to read the paper, but we got to learn. And just little things like that, you know, which probably don't seem much talking about it, but when I flash back on my life, I'm very aware of the firm foundation that she gave us.
How do you get from Glasgow, Scotland, to where you are today? How do you get discovered there? I'm guessing there aren't too many big clubs there to perform in. How does the road start?
I guess it's different for everyone. I was one of those very fortunate people who was very much in the right place at the right time. and had the attitude of, why not me? Why shouldn't I try? So I would audition for a million things. But I auditioned for a 1-hour documentary show. It was a film documentary that BBC Television wanted to make about the making of a single and what it takes to launch a new artist. So to do that, they had to first of all find a new artist. So they auditioned all over the country. They found me, they took me to a record company and auditioned for the record company and got a recording contract. And then they filmed the first year of that. So it was like a fairy tale kind of opportunity. And luckily for them and for me, the record was a hit, and it made it look like, oh wow, you know, we're a really fun, neat thing. But it meant that my every move was exposed to the world. And when I was going through my stumbling first steps learning phase, all of those moments the public could see. So it's like you had no secrets, you know. You had to learn that you could never be cool and suave in life. I could never be hip and cool because I was just a kid learning in front of everybody. You
think it was that drove you eventually into therapy? Those just kind of dealing with that?
Oh, it was my marriage breaking up. No, actually, I went to therapy through my husband and I at the time. We were going through a lot of trouble in the marriage, and we were heading towards a divorce. But before the divorce stage, we figured we would try joint counseling. And the marriage didn't work out. I mean, it still hit the rocks. But the one thing that I learned through the joint counseling was that I wasn't as smart as I thought I was. And I didn't know as much about myself as I thought I did. And that I needed someone to kind of put my own life into perspective. And I needed someone who could be objective and who could teach me how to analyze my patterns and change the negative cycles that we get into. And it really helped me a lot. I really appreciated those, it's like a year and a half of going once a week. And she really helped me a lot. And I definitely would go back when I have time. I'd like to, I wish I could go once a week now, because it just keeps you on an even keel. It's amazing the amount of things I would come away and I'd think, boy, I hadn't even thought about that until she asked a question.
Like what?
Stuff like, you'd be going, she said, well, how was your day? And you go, oh, it was fine, I did this and I did that, and such happened, that happened. She go, well, how did that make you feel? And I'm in a business of doing things. And sometimes when we're caught up in the business of doing and being an achiever and trying to get things done, we forget to think about how it makes us feel. And sometimes a little thing and how it makes you feel comes out in the weirdest ways. And it's an old cliche, like when you're angry at somebody for something they did, you're not really angry at them for what they did then. You're angry because it reminds you of what happened when you were 10, you know? Another thing that really taught me was that I was affected much more by my father's death than I ever knew I was. He died when I was 10, and at the time, it affected me, I guess, but I didn't realize the repercussions that has all through your adult life. And I really appreciated being able to be let into that, you know, to kind of have your own mind revealed to yourself. It's good, and it teaches you a lot of stuff.
I don't think it's appropriate for me to ask about the private manifestations of that, but in terms of your public life, your performing life, what did that allow you to do? What opportunities did that open up to you that you were able to seize that you might not otherwise have been able to?
It gave me more confidence, and it allowed me to be more comfortable with myself. I realized that I had done something, and that was when I was younger and first starting out, it was like going through a jungle with a big machete. This is the example I give to myself because it's a visual image that works for me. It's like you're hacking through the jungle and you're creating the path and you're cutting through and you're so determined to get somewhere that your fear goes. You're not afraid of the snakes and the lions and the tigers. You just get there. And then when you carve out this little piece of safe ground, it's like I stayed there. And I wasn't advancing as an artist. I wasn't advancing as a performer. I was just like going, boy, I got here and I'm safe. And after therapy, it taught me that, hey, you have to just keep forging on as a person and as an artist. And so therefore, I put this machete back in my hand, and I may not be like blustering through the jungle, but I'm hacking my way back through the jungle. And when I want to feel safe, I climb up a tree and I hang on there for a little while, and I come back down and I keep going. But it taught me that life is ongoing, and this sounds like so phony and cliched, but it's really like, that's really how I felt. It's like you just keep going, just keep doing it. And it's like education is so valuable to me. I love the education process, and I love learning new things, and I loved learning about how people think, because people are the most important thing in the world. Relationships are so important.
So is that education through observation, or a more formal kind of education, through picking up books and reading them? Or
both. I mean, I continue to educate myself in different ways. I taught myself the computer. I mean, I bought a computer and decided I'm getting with the computer age, and I teach myself astronomy, because it's not astrology, but astronomy, because it's interesting, and I started to learn about my environment and politics, and I became someone who was apolitical because I was totally lazy about politics. I just couldn't be bothered with learning about it. I became, from that, to being very political and politically minded and politically involved.
Speaking of politics, how did you react when Tipper Gore assailed Sugar Walls, the Prince tune, as pornographic?
I'm glad that you attached the label of politics to that, because that's exactly what that whole movement was a political movement, and not a lot of people understand that that was a political issue, and not about music, not about rock and roll, but it was, censorship is in very many cases a political issue to begin with. And Tipper Gore wasn't attacking Sheena Easton personally, nor the song Sugar Walls. Tipper Gore was heading a committee which was attacking a great deal of pop music and a great deal of lyrics. Madonna couldn't sing "Like a Virgin," like the V word can't be used in a song. And I guess the outcome of all of that was a lot of artists backed by the ACLU, and a lot of people who stand up for First Amendment rights said, hey, if you don't like what you're hearing, don't listen to it. And I very much say, look, if a parent comes to me and says, Sheena, I don't think Sugar Walls is the kind of song that I want my 10-year-old to listen to, I say, fine, I have no argument with that. Then don't let your 10-year-old listen to it.
You know what their argument is, that they don't want to censor anything, but they have no way of knowing unless they take the entire album, listen to it themselves, and sometimes they might not be hip enough to get all the messages. The horse is out of the barn on this before they're able to do anything about it. That was their argument. So they don't want to censor anything, but they want that little label on there so we know.
Yeah, and labels are very dangerous, because your idea of what is too adult may not be my idea. I will have children hopefully someday, and they can listen to Sugar Walls. It doesn't offend me. I would be more inclined to look at some violence that I see and go, don't want my kids being involved with that. I am more upset and worried about the implications of the Iran-Contra, and I'm more concerned about the outcome of the re-examining Roe versus Wade than worrying about if my kid is getting upset by listening to a Madonna record or a Sheena Easton record. I said, honey, I don't like this game. You make me feel fire.
So you were Mrs. Sonny Crockett on Miami Vice. Were you upset when they had to kill you?
No, I think that most of us, we just hit the dust pretty soon. Shot in the back. Story of my life.
A pleasure to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Sheena Easton. That's it for Night 2 from Los Angeles. We'll see you later.
Join Bob tomorrow night for more from the Wild West with Gene Wilder. Accommodations furnished by the Sheraton Universal Hotel, the official hotel of Universal Studios. On your next visit to Hollywood, visit Sheraton Universal Hotel, the home of the stars.